I am Chad Jenkins, the host of Christ Over Fear, and it's episode 40 today on Christ Over Fear. I do have to say, I'm pretty fired up on how this interview came to fruition. So, none other than Jake Denman, Jericho, as those who famously follow his verified Instagram account would refer to him. But Jake posted a photo of it was my last deployment during my time with Second Ranger Battalion, of us, I think, doing a patrol, or him doing a patrol in Baji or Tikrit, or somewhere in that area. And I commented on that post. And then the third platoon medic, James Merrick, commented on that post as well. And that's how we kind of got connected. We were already following each other on Instagram, but it's been 2007 timeframe would have been the last time we saw each other in person. He was the BCO third platoon medic in Second Ranger Battalion when I was the company executive officer and ground force commander of that last deployment. And sure enough, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I see you have a podcast, Christ Over Fear. If you're ever looking for a guest, I'd like to join you." And I took him up on that offer immediately because I just wanted to hear his story. I wanted to reconnect. That's one of the plus sides of social media, to be quite frank, is to get connections like this and to hear that. And when he said he was willing and able to come on, I said, "Man, let's do it." So without further ado, I will bring James Merrick on as our guest for episode 40. He is currently the fire captain out in Oregon, in Central Oregon. He's been in that position for about a year. He's also a husband and a father of 3 children. And then obviously he was in Second Ranger Battalion BCO as a combat medic. And without further ado, let me bring him on the screen. What is up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. So it was pretty sweet to be able to connect with you and have you to reach out on that Instagram post. And both of us kind of, you know, Jake Denman making his little snide comment that he wasn't afraid to go over the railroad crossing bridge. I am with you, dude. I would not want to do that again. That is for another time and another discussion. But
Yep.
I was really excited to have you on this show, man. So first and foremost, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
I'm always looking for opportunities to share my journey of faith because it was I don't know. I don't know if anyone has a standard journey to developing a relationship with Christ, but mine certainly was. I got questions for God when I get upstairs, you know what I mean?
Well, and that's the cool thing, man. That's what this show is about, Christ Over Fear. It's and that's what the target audience is hopefully combat veterans who are watching this, who are listening in to any podcast platform that they tune in, or on YouTube, the YouTube channel. But it's wherever we are in our walk, right? Wherever you are, wherever I am, wherever they are, and hoping to really knock down those barriers, knock down those walls to say, "Hey, man, it's not that we have everything in place or together and that we still don't have questions, quite frank,
hmm
but to be open about it, to be transparent about it, and to just share our stories in him, to hopefully invigorate others to ask those questions as well." So I love that that's where you're at on it. And just let's go off we're landing on the X today with some little ones feeling under the weather and some time crunch, but that's okay. That's how we like to do it. That's what we did on my last deployment. Your first was quick, fast, and furious. But how did you, like, what was your story, James? Like, when you got into the military, when you got into, I guess it probably would have been what, rap at that time? Was it RASP? It wasn't RASP. Rope
It
or
was
RIP?
RIP. It was still
RIP.
RIP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through in '05. So, yeah, I joined in '04, and I think religion was the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, I honestly because I was thinking about this morning as I joined with hate in my heart. I was in high school for 9/11, and I couldn't wait to get out, and I had no intentions of joining the military. It was not. I mean, other than the normal, kid, young boy kind of aspirations of putting on camo and going out in the woods, and like the idea of being a soldier. But I never was any kind of, like I talk to kids now who are like, no, that's my plan from here to here, and that wasn't me at all. I wanted to be a firefighter since I was a little kid, and 9/11 happening for me was just, well, I want to go kill some bad guys and maybe while I'm in there, I can get my medic and use that when I get out. And so it was just literally a stepping stone for me. But at any rate, I didn't know God when I joined the military for sure. I knew there were people that I was definitely the looked at religious people as stupid. To be honest with you, I've
Mhm.
always been a real smart person. I would say that I'm the poster child for too smart for your own good. And so, um, I guess let me back up real quick just to start out. Like my journey kind of starts from when I was raised Catholic. If and so
Yeah.
uh, For me, I went through the whole Eucharist process, just nodding along. Like I said, I'm pretty sharp, and so I can memorize things and absolutely not actually take them in. Just enough I need to pass the test, and so I got through all that without even understanding the concept of the Holy Trinity or who Jesus was, how to develop a personal relationship with Jesus. And at home, we were for more or less just secular. The Bible was never cracked at home. We said this one pre-meal prayer. It was just a script, and we all kind of nodded along and almost said it cynically. And so to me, I didn't see any people that had a lot of deep faith. We didn't even talk about God at all, especially not the way that I do in my house with my kids. And so
Mhm.
um, I just kind of let it go, if you will. To me, it was treated like a hobby at my house. We'd go to church on Sunday for socialization, um, and uh, that's how I saw it as. You go for donuts and orange juice, and so I stopped going. I don't remember what point, but my dad said you could stay home or you can go to church, and of course, I wanted to stay home and play Nintendo or what have you, and so anyways, my faith kinda I guess I don't really know if I had faith. I had so many questions as a kid, like what was before God? What it was I wasn't good with the starting at the point of God exists and using the Bible to teach about God necessarily because I've just been a very curious kid and what didn't really accept things very easily. And there wasn't anybody around me that could answer those kind of questions.
Mhm.
And so then I went into school in the public school system and learned about evolution. And I essentially came up in the '90s when they were kind of kicking any part of God. We did the pledge of excuse me, the Pledge of Allegiance, and we were allowed to say God then. But other than that, I mean, the Bible wasn't even taught as at all. I mean, it was removed, and so to me, I viewed them as two separate things: religion and science. And then I'm taught, well, okay, we all evolved from a puddle of goo, and now we're complex human beings, and it just somehow it just made sense. They have a little chart that shows monkeys growing up into us,
Mhm.
and I don't know, at this point in my life, it that makes less sense to me than being created. So it's hard for me to like really go back and think about that because there was that shift when and I'll get to that. But at any rate, um, I just drifted away from God at that point. Any kind of relationship I might have had, and just went further and further. And when I was in school and I was drinking and hanging out with not the worst crowd, but certainly, just trying to be popular and I would look at kids that were faithful and call them Bible thumper, not to their face or anything, but to my friends,
Right.
Bible thumpers, and I wasn't rude, but I looked at them as less than, and they must not be as smart as me because I know that we evolved from, and this was just one big accident, right?
Mhm.
And of course, then going on from there, I wouldn't say I was an atheist. I wouldn't actively, like we have these uh, modern day atheists that are actively like going out and saying that God doesn't exist. It
Right.
was just more like I don't know, maybe somewhere between atheist and agnostic. If anybody
Mhm.
brought it up, I'd say, oh yeah, I don't believe that. And I'd say, maybe I was somewhere along the lines of, oh yeah, I'm sure those stories are about, they're just misrepresented and it's not the literal word of God, and I just hadn't put much thought to it. I think like a lot of people, I was walking around thinking, well, I'm overall a good person, so if there is a heaven, I'll be fine. Which, of course, now as a Christian, I know that's not how it works. And so, anyways, I joined the army, lacking faith, and uh, I, I it's amazing because there was a moment in Afghanistan when a grenade went off while I was working on Jordan Bressler. I don't know if you
Yeah.
know him,
Yep.
and uh, it it was one of ours that bounced back, and everybody's clearing out of the way, and Jordan and I couldn't really go anywhere, and so we just kind of tucked, and there was guys that got hit with shrapnel around us, nothing major. In fact, one of them came up after me afterwards and was like, "Hey, I don't want to make a big deal about this," but anyways, I mean, I could see the grenade itself through my night vision. I could see it clearly. I mean, it was close enough to see every detail, and that thing, didn't cause any further damage. I mean, that's an act of God, and I just still plowed through life, not thinking anything of it,
So
and
that wasn't even like the aha moment or
oh
anything for
no,
you?
no,
No. No.
no, God found me at the bottom of a bottle,
Yeah. Well,
and
you're not the
honestly,
only one.
yeah, and at the wrong end of a barrel, at one point even. Um, but yeah, so like I said, my journey was rocky and rough, but it was the only way that it could have happened. I think just by the kind of person that God made me, um, and He needed to make that faith strong and durable. And I think that's exactly what I got. You know that I was thinking about this the other day, that poem about the footprints, and
Yep.
it's like, you think, oh man, where was God? And it's like, well, I was carrying you.
Right.
It's like
Uh-huh.
there's certainly plenty of I mean of distance where he's carrying me, but it's also, I was thinking about for myself personally, it's full of like just mess where we were wrestling, and I was pushing him away. And so
Yeah.
I was just thinking there's if you looked at it, you'd see footprints on both sides, just pushing away and pushing, and then carrying me again, and then it's but then then right now there you see both sets of footprints walking side by side. So but yeah,
Well,
so
well, can I ask you a quick question on the,
oh
like,
please, yeah.
with that grenade? I mean, I have similar instances of memories, and I'm like, man, retrospectively, we can look back, right? Retrospectively, we can look back and be like, yeah, we ultimately know who he's omnipresent everywhere, right? All the time.
Hmm.
And even in that moment, like, was there like a tiny bit of faith for you, or like something uh, at all? Like, I look back sometimes and I'm like, now I get it. I'm unashamed about talking about it, and what I knew God was doing at that moment, or how He was playing a role in that. And even though I didn't recognize it at the time, I mean, you did have like a tiny, tiny mustard seed of faith. It sounds like. I mean, even with
Well,
the
I mean,
upbringing, or
I
would you
think
say no?
I totally wrote it off as, well, I guess that's just an example of how grenades work. Like they say, if you're close enough to it,
Yeah.
it goes up and out, right, in that pattern. So that I was like, we just must have been under that
Okay.
pattern,
All right.
and
So your
it's
intellect
interesting
kicked
because
in.
when I got out, and I don't, I think it must have, that was my last deployment. So when I got back and I was having dinner with and telling that story to my mom, she said, well, God protected you.
Uh-huh.
He had put a bubble around you and protected you. And my mom growing up wasn't, she was, I could definitely call her the kind that's like spiritual, not religious. She's gone to church on and off. And I know now that she's a faithful person, but I didn't know that. And my parents divorced too when I was young, so they didn't really model the best examples on either end of that kind of stuff. So, um, but anyways, she told me that, and I just again wrote it off. Just, oh yeah, I'm sure, yeah, God, you
Yeah.
know.
So,
um,
dude, let's get to the meat and
the
potatoes.
moment,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So,
it's such a good buildup. I appreciate you coming on, and I love that because I think not that everybody's story's not unique in their own, and especially I do think God uses others, like some people, to have
mhm,
these like powerful testimonies where and I'm not minimizing somebody that comes to Christ when they're 7 years old and is diligent and
Right.
faithful. I think the rewards that they, receive here, and especially probably once they get to heaven, will be, something we can't even fathom. But I also think that the stories of what you've shared thus far and where you're going, man, those are the ones
Hmm.
that grab people here on earth, because
Yeah.
so many are similar in where they are, where you were in your walk. And they're like, well, yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, the intellect's there and they have it figured out on, yes, it's evolution and that's where we came from. And that's why we can see so many shades of green. I'm on a Fargo kick right now with my wife and
Hmm.
watching that. So if you haven't tuned into Fargo, that's my green, and being able to differentiate. That's my pointing to that. So, but I want to hear like where's it go from here, man?
Yeah, so I mean, I was a big drinker in the army, like everybody else, I guess. I started drinking at a young age. My mom is a recovering alcoholic. She got sober. I helped her get sober 5 years before I got sober,
Hmm.
and it runs in her side of the family, and so it's no surprise or anything. But um, it's like being in a frat when you're in Ranger Battalion, and I don't know. Hopefully, the culture's changed a little bit now, as it seems like the culture at large has gotten a little bit more responsible about drinking. I don't know. I don't go out much anymore, but at any rate, I got pretty low, pretty down. That you say like, I guess the term high functioning alcoholic, even though it's really that's just an alcoholic. But
Hmm.
I mean, it's the only thing holding together was my job, and just barely. I had plenty of times coming in hungover, and I used to live over in Portland area, so
Hmm.
it'd be about a 3.5 hour drive, and I just call in sick because I'd be hungover, didn't want to get up, and I mean, it was. So who knows how close I got to losing that part.
And this is when you
Uh,
were
I
doing
was a
your current.
firefighter at the time.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Um, and gosh, I was even a volunteer police officer at the time for the sheriff's office where I lived. And but again, you wouldn't know from the outside. But I was hurting on the inside. I was dealing with all kinds of just stuff. I guess I mean, PTSD for sure. I'd never been diagnosed or anything like that, but certainly every time I'd get drunk, I'd be wailing about things I wasn't proud of that happened in the military, and you know, all you name it, all kinds
Hmm.
of stuff, and it kind of culminated to a point where my wife was essentially, I'm like, I'm going to leave you if you don't knock this off.
Yeah.
There have been several times I just drink to blacking out at night, and I was lost. I had no purpose other than my job, and that's what saved me is that I mean, I go to work for 48 hours at a time, and I get to help people, and that's such a tremendous. That's the other thing is I can't believe that I didn't see sooner is the kind of people that I work with, and the kind of things that I see on the job. It's proof of God right there. But if you're not looking for it, you don't see it, kind of thing. But anyways, back to my spiral there. I ended up. I mean, it was gosh, I was on my last chance, with my wife, and I guess it turned out to be the second to last chance. But uh, I had a moment, and I was actually sober um, for the moment. It must have been earlier in the day, and I was in the shower, and I had well, I mean, Jesus talked to me. That's the only way. And then, I mean, you understand. It's then when I tell the story to other people, I have to kind of preface it with, look, I mean, it wasn't my voice. We all
Yeah.
have our thinking voice, and we have, um, I believe that we have different. We're animated by different spirits. It's kind of something I steal from Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you listen to him much or
Oh
know much
yeah.
about him,
He's
but
Yep.
I believe I'd like. I mean, it's a good way to. I mean, when you're enraged, you can't control that. That's a spirit that animates you. And anyway, so it wasn't anything I was familiar with, and just a simple message that said, "I came in your form," and it was super weird. And I I just it was said several times. It wasn't any kind of booming voice. I knew I wasn't crazy, but it was significant, and I thought I was like, "What does that even mean?" And this was at 30 years old, I think, Um, my wife, who was raised Christian, and she went to church her whole life, and unbeknownst to me at that point in our marriage, she still was of deep faith. We never talked about it because she could tell that I wasn't into it, I guess. And like I said, I was in a dark place, the furthest from God I could be, which is, the further you are from God, the closer to hell you are. So I feel like I was
Mm.
in a form of that. And like I said, this voice came out of nowhere. I had to come out and ask my wife, "Hey, Jesus is God in human form, right?" She's like, "Yeah, like duh, kind of." And I'm like, "Okay, I think God just talked to me." I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I mean, I was shaking. It was, you know, it's like any, the feeling during the experience and then during the realization was euphoric. I
Hmm.
mean, in a way, like that's the only best way I can think of to describe it, but without any kind of outside influence, um, which is how I knew how important it was,
Hmm.
and so I was hit with that, and then all of a sudden, and at this point still hadn't quit drinking, but I mean it was so powerful. I called everybody in my family. I got hammered by that night, of course, to celebrate, right? Um, and,
In good Ranger fashion.
yeah, and so I called everybody I knew and said, I God is real. I believe in God, and I don't think I did before. I think I said I maybe have said in my life that I believed, but I really do. I told each one of them like as much as the sky is blue, I
Yeah.
believe God is real, and I've never felt that way. And so then now it's like, okay, so God's real, and the one that reached out to me was the one that came in human form. And
Uh-huh.
there's only one that I know of religion where that happened. So it's like I got some research to do. And so
Yeah.
I mean, I had to step in as a brand new born again Christian. And I'd already been baptized as a baby as a Catholic. And then when I was in high school, I got baptized with a couple of friends because I wanted to impress girls.
Hmm.
And so that wasn't genuine at all. And yeah, I still haven't been baptized again, but I don't know whether I need to. I'm happy to, but either way, it's a couple fake. Well, one is obviously as a baby. That's the Catholic thing, but I had the disingenuous baptism, and then all of a sudden I had the real. Oh, okay, this is real. Um, but I ended up back to Christianity through Jordan Peterson. He did a whole. It was actually I mean, he did all kinds of things to save my life because he helped me to get that final push out of drinking,
Hmm.
and that's almost a whole story by itself. I heard him on Jocko's podcast. My friend pointed me towards him and said, "Look, listen to this guy." I think it was 2016. Kind of when the noise level on the craziness in our culture kind of started really cranking up,
Hmm.
and he points out to the weird stuff that's happening, and he can put his finger on it, and
Yeah.
and I was like, okay. And then I listened to him. He's talking about personal responsibility and this and that, and I was like, man, that's all the things you're not doing. And I kind of been resting on my laurels as you're an Army Ranger, and you're a firefighter, and you're a cop and this and that, and it's like, yeah, but you're also, quite frankly, being a deadbeat dad. I had two very young boys at the time, and I was drinking to excess all the time, and um, anyway, so I had it was probably a few months between when I had that connection to Christ and quitting drinking, and that culminated with some bad decision making that thankfully didn't end up criminal, but uh, that I had to go to an AA meeting. My mom came to town, and thank God I got sober. Um, but going into the sorry, I know I've sidetracked a couple times here, but going
You
into the
haven't, dude. You haven't. This
AA
is like
meeting uh,
this is
with
pure audible gold right now.
so when I went into the AA meeting, I'm looking around at the steps, and I kind of knew the gist of it, but my idea was a bunch of sad, drunk, lonely people sitting in a room just moping, and I didn't want any part of that. I thought I'm probably going to see people I go on calls for and this and that, and now thinking about it, it's like, actually, no, the people you go on calls for are the ones that aren't in the meetings that should be. Anyway, so I'm one of the first things is you need to recognize that there's a power that's higher than you that can bring you to sanity.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, so a God has to be God. Check, done. Because I'm like coming in here like the experienced Christian who just figured out that God's real and trying to catch up on what Christianity means. And so um, I go in, and the other thing is like, you have to basically confess your sins. You have to write down all the things that you did as a drunk, and then you have to go tell people that you've harmed, that you're sorry. And I'm like, all right, so that's like atoning for your sins. I'm like, dude, this is just Christianity, and it turns out the founder was a Christian, but at the same time, he wanted to make sure that it was open to anyone that was of any faith or no faith. And it's, because even an atheist is like, there's got to be a power outside of you, call it what you want, call it the universe, call it nature. And so I was leaving the first meeting with my mom, and I go, this is just trying to get people to be Christian and not drink.
Yeah.
And she's like, shh, don't say that. There's some people in here that, they'll think they're getting duped and they'll leave. So
Right.
anyway, but
Now,
yeah, I
hey,
had
real
this.
quick, how quickly you said that was like 2 months from what is it? I came in your form. I came in your form.
Yeah,
What
yeah, I came in your form. That was the
I
message I
came in your
got when
form,
I
and
was in
then
the
about 2 months
shower.
later is when you started AA then?
I might be off on the timeline, but it was
Okay, yeah.
pretty quick after. And the other thing is, I had when I actually made the decision to quit drinking, because I wavered, and it's like, okay, in my mind, because living in truth versus pretending to live in truth is two different things, right? It's
Yeah,
like, and
right.
it's never more apparent than when you may have to quit drinking, right? Because it's,
Yeah.
they say on the little coin, to thine own self be true. And it's like, you could be secretly drinking, which I did several times after I quit. I had several
Uh-huh.
relapses, and my whole thing, my shtick was hiding alcohol around the house and secretly drinking and trying to hide it from my family and my wife. And that would last for a couple weeks before my wife would call me out, and then, it'd be, but I've been sober now for over 2 years, and this is
Nice.
the final. But it's like, I made the decision to quit drinking in 2018.
Okay.
That's when I became a not non-drinker. Um,
Mhm.
so, where I made it known to everyone, you shouldn't see me at a bar, just so you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when I actually made that decision, it was almost as powerful as the feeling of understanding God.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I had this feeling in the moment when I said, all right, I'm not a drinker anymore, I'm going to go down this path. It was this feeling that I turned off potential pathways in my future. Like, there is no more future of me crashing into someone, getting charged with manslaughter, or
Mm.
dying and leaving my family fatherless. Um, because of that decision, that literally can't happen. It's like, it's almost like thinking like Back to the Future. That photograph starts disappearing as
Oh,
he
yeah,
changes,
right.
and it
Yep.
was like I just did something that altered my future in a way that was powerful, and that's the kind of feeling I had. And the same thing happened when I had that feeling in the shower, and it makes sense because becoming close with God and then becoming a Christian again, obviously, hugely altered my life
Right.
in only positive ways. So yeah, back to Jordan Peterson. I heard him on Jocko, and then I started listening to other stuff that he'd done, and I found that he did a multi-part series on Genesis. And he's a psychologist, and so his background is psychology, which turns out psychology, I mean, it's, in a way, it used to be, before you'd go to a psychologist, you'd go to a philosopher or a priest or
Mhm.
a pastor. That's where you'd go to sort out your mental health or your spiritual health. You
Right.
could argue is one and the same.
Yeah.
And so, and he gets that. And so his way of describing Genesis and the Bible stories, is, first of all, I didn't read any of the classics. I didn't go to college. I've taken some community college, and I got my paramedic in the military, and have a lot of firefighter certificates, but I didn't read the classics, and so I didn't really get into that. And the way that he explained that a story can be true even if it didn't happen, And he brought the Bible story into that context, and it's I don't know why, I've never understood this before, but I do happen to believe that the Bible is the word of God. It is that those things did happen,
Right.
as they said they did, but even at the time, I wasn't there. I didn't understand, but he got me to the point of, "Look, it doesn't matter if it happened. It's true."
Hmm.
And it's like, I don't know why, I just didn't, until that moment, and the way and so he goes into the story, and he explains why it's psychologically true. Whether you believe in this or not, whether you here's why it's this story, and he breaks it down on a psychological level, and it made sense to me, like I'd never heard it before, and so then I'm like, "Okay, now I understand how this book works. Now I need to dive into the book. Now I need to." And so, you know, through going to church and, um, talking with my wife, and I mean, we just became a spiritual family, and we were intentional about raising our children with God, and yeah, so it's just been kind of I've been going from there. I'm on day 275 of reading the Bible in a year.
Nice.
Um,
Is that the
so
Bible
yeah,
app?
it's like, man, why didn't somebody tell me these stories when I was a young boy? I mean, these are incredible, amazing stories. I mean, I
Yeah, but
just
you know
feel
what, James? I
deprived.
mean, it's not to interrupt you. So there's been one word that's like been overwhelmingly like just in my head as I've heard your story, and it's like it's grace, to be honest. It's just grace. Like it's grace, and I think what it comes from, and it's similar to how I feel about the grace he gave me, is especially when you talk about your wife and your kids. Like we're undeserving of that, right? We're
Hmm.
undeserving of his grace and to be, in their presence, but like he's given us that. And he, like, how many times has he given you, one more day of grace to be
Right,
able to be that father and that husband. And and what you said about like when you were like, having your little stashes around the house, but like that it took place where they'll be so young they won't remember it. That's his grace, right?
right,
And then that you are raising them in a household where they see you and your wife united as a perfect image of God, a husband and wife and how they raise their children. I mean, it, now we don't often aren't the perfect image of that, but it is the perfect image that he's
right,
united in that perfect union. So I mean, I just think it's awesome from that front, and that you have and I think also what you said, like the intellect and having the intellect that he gave you, and
right.
it being
What? How
used.
arrogant I was.
Well, I know, but like that's what's cool now, though, is
Yeah,
like you can share that, and like
yeah.
and,
Well,
and
I
we
wish I
are.
would have been introduced to some smart Christians growing up.
Yeah.
Not that I wasn't. It's just they weren't. I wasn't. Like I'm really into like this. There's this podcast called "I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist." It's
Hmm.
oh gosh, what's his name? Might recognize him. Dr. Frank Turek.
Okay,
You ever
I
heard
don't
him?
know that name.
So he's an apologist, and I'd never spoken to an apologist, and they talk about belief in God for rational reasons. Like for
Right.
instance, I had never thought about the fact that God has to exist. No one explained to me that. Like I was like, oh no, the Big Bang is how the universe happened. It's like, okay, well, that was a miracle because something can't come from nothing. And I
Right.
skipped over that. Like
Right.
they glaze over that in school. Like
Yeah.
because even the smartest scientist, atheist type in the world will tell you, I need one miracle to explain my
Right.
version of the universe. You need two.
Nothing created everything out of nothing, or God created everything out of nothing. Which one do you want
Right?
to go with?
Oh
That's
man,
the
there's a
that's the root that, to your point, no
yeah,
one on that side of the spectrum wants to go to that state. So God created everything, or nothing created everything out of nothing.
right. Not to
We have
mention
to
the
start
universe,
somewhere.
there's the unmoved mover, right? Like I was way into physics in high school, and now it's like I know nothing about it. But quantum physics is interesting to me because I think there's proof of God in that.
Right.
And I don't know if you know about heard about the two slit experiment,
No, I have
where
not.
so they took a piece of metal with two slits in it, photon sensitive paper on the other side of it, and they have a electron gun, and they're shooting essentially, I guess, be photons, at this paper, and it should show up as a wave. I believe I could get this wrong. Maybe someone will fact check me on this. It's wave or particle. I believe it's supposed to be a wave. So they run the experiment. It shows up on the paper as a wave. When they don't look at the whole thing happening, it shows up as particles. Or
Uh-huh.
no, excuse me, it's the other way around. I think it's the other way around. When they're looking, it's particles. When they're not looking, it's wave. Either way, it's completely opposite results when a human is not observing, when there's no observer. And it's like that's a lot. That enough right there
Right.
is it's just to just make someone that's like thinks they have this figured out and there's no God take a
Right.
pause.
Yeah.
Something weird's going on here,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very interesting stuff. And so now it's like I can geek out on that stuff
Yeah.
and I help explain to like my friends at work who are maybe agnostic or aren't sure and this and that. It's
Right.
like, all right, if I can get you to the point of knowing that God has to exist, there has to be a being outside of stuff that created stuff, like because of physics.
Right.
And and because the universe exploded in one direction, there has to be like, right? Like it would have, it should have, if it was all big, just it would go in every direction, but it seems to be going in one direction. So that would mean there was something that didn't budge,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
how, and it would have to be something big and powerful that didn't budge to resist all of the universe,
Right.
and like stuff like that. If I would have just been exposed to it, but the way that God brought me here is for a reason, so that I can explain it to thick-headed, people like myself who take a while to get
Yeah.
here,
There's your
and
ministry. Well,
And I
and
mean, honestly, I
also,
mean, that's like if I didn't go through addiction, because I was addicted to opiates too for a short time. Luckily, unfortunately, when my best friend went to prison for robbing pharmacies, I
mm,
figured that was a good time to quit. But at any rate, if I hadn't gone through these experiences, I couldn't minister to people that are going through those experiences. And
right.
I'm totally up for being God's person that, hey, I got to have someone go through this so that you can tell them how to get to me because they're lost,
Mhm.
and you figured out the path here. Show them your path, kind of thing. And that's just I have that feeling, and and yeah, because it's just like if you look at right now, politicians trying to solve the homeless problem by getting more housing, it's because
Mhm.
they've never met one and they don't know what they're going through. Um, And so it's the same thing with helping them find God or helping anyone find God. If you haven't been through what they've been through, it's going to be really difficult to bring them to where you are now.
Yeah. No, you're right, and I just, that you're willing and able, and the one other thing about your, your being in the presence of the Lord and when he spoke to you in the shower, my old pastor down in Florida, he used to say something when others would and myself, I've had one experience. It wasn't an audible voice like you heard, but it was an audible feeling. Um, and he goes, when you know that you know that you know that God is real. And that was
Hmm.
like your experience, uh, you know, only to you and only to grab you was that moment where he had to come and audibly speak to you. But when you left that, when you turned that water off, you knew that you knew that you knew that he was
Yep.
real. And I mean,
Right.
like, how powerful is that, man?
Yeah. I mean, it
And
was
it's the
life
best.
changing.
Right.
I
Life
mean,
changing.
it's obviously I haven't been perfect at this whole thing since that
Yeah.
moment, but it's very easy for my wife and I to look back and see when we were closest to God, our life was good.
Right.
And when we were furthest from God, our life was not good. I mean, it's very simple, it's,
Yeah.
um, I mean, because I truly can understand the distance from God is hell. That's
Mhm.
that's
No, I
just
like
the way.
that, dude. That was powerful. I haven't heard that part, like, here on Earth, and, like, the further you are, the closer you are to hell. I
Oh
just have
yeah,
never heard it in that context. I think that's I'm
yeah.
gonna steal that one from you.
That's all right. Have you seen that movie 13 Soldiers, the Benghazi one?
No,
13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi.
I have
Oh
not.
man, that's a powerful movie. It's about one of the dudes. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. He's a former Ranger,
Okay.
and he ended up at that embassy in Benghazi defending it. And in the movie, there's a guy that's plays one of the ex SEALs, and he's like the intellectual type, and he's reading this book, and he goes, "Give us what's the quote today?" And he said, "All the gods, all the heavens, all the hells are within you."
Mm.
And it's something ever since I heard that, I haven't stopped thinking about it, and I've seen some people, expand on that and everything, and it's like, I feel it's absolutely true. I mean, you can bring yourself to the closest to heaven you can get on earth,
Yep.
and you can bring yourself, I think, the closest to hell you can get on earth. And I think addiction or any of the seven deadly sins will bring you there very quickly. But
Mm.
any life of sin will bring you there. I mean,
Yeah.
because sinning is I mean, it's the more you sin, the further you get from God. I mean, it's you can't get around that. You
Yeah.
have to. It's you can't cheat the system. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, being I mean, at the lowest of my low, I was, suicidal, literally I had gun in mouth,
Mm.
bottle empty, um, and that's the closest I think I've ever been to hell, and that's yeah, it's very easy to see now. That was distance from God. That was because you can't you almost can't bring yourself to do that if you're anywhere near God. You know,
Mhm.
but
Well, I appreciate you saying that and just sharing that with us,
yeah,
um, because there's those who aren't as far along the path with their walk with Him and where they are in their struggles currently. So for them to be able to hear that, though, hopefully, if somebody hears that and can relate, and then hear the way out of that. That's the power.
mhm.
That's where the power is held. So, man, I just can't thank you enough for coming on today, James. I know you got a lot going on at the household, and we got to wrap up here, but I cannot state how much I appreciate you being able to come on just to be able to reconnect from however many years, coming up on 20 years, practically
Oh,
17
yeah.
of being post that, but being able to just come up and have you share that and and be able to speak into the lives of those who are out there and who need to hear it. That's what this show's about. Raw, transparent, real. That's the tagline. And you were it today. So thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely, anytime. Yeah, I like I said, I've got a a weird journey to get here, and so it's always good to share it with people because I think it applies to everyone, and so, like, I just got this deep feeling, like I said, that if you have the ability to connect with people of all different, it's, I was reading Isaiah for the first time, or rather listening to it for the first time, and it's like, I can kinda relate how he's like because there's that, of course, the one that everybody knows, I think it's 6:8, where it's "Whom shall I send?" And he says,
Yeah.
"Send
Send
me."
me.
And a lot of military folks, I think, and first responders can relate to that, but there's also the line where it's right around there, and I'm not good at quoting yet because 'cause I'm only on my first time around in the Bible, but
Oh, that's all
something to
right.
the effect of, like, "Why are you gonna use me? Like, I have an unclean tongue, and, I hang out with rough people or whatever," and he's like, "That's why I'm using you because I
Yeah.
need you to talk to those," and it's like I'm like, "Oh, that's like me," like, because like I said, whether it's at work or on duty or wherever I go, I interact with all kinds of, you know, tattooed and, off the beaten path kind of people, and it might not wanna talk about God very often. It's like and I oftentimes surprise people, and I just casually talk about God, and I bring it up whenever I can, and "Oh, you're a Christian? Yeah. Yeah, let me tell you about it," kinda thing.
Yeah. Well, you've been a pleasure, man. I love it. Love reconnecting with you. And now go take care of those precious gifts from him, man.
Yeah, I can hear my boys, went and grabbed the baby out of the crib, so
All
that
right.
was
So
really
go
nice of
get
them.
them, man.
Yep.
Love reconnecting with you, though. Great to see you, James.
You too.
All right. Take care.
You too.
All right, folks. Hey, that was James Merrick, fire captain now out in Oregon, and Ranger Beco 275 Ranger medic with an unbelievable story on his walk with Christ and just the raw, transparent realness that he was today. Can't thank him enough for being on episode number 40. Hey, as always, share this podcast, whether it's the YouTube channel or whether it's on the podcast players that you listen to, Christ Over Fear. The more shares out there, the more people can listen to this and hopefully resonate with them, the better. So I'd appreciate if you could do that. All right, until next time, continue to fight the good fight. Thanks. Bye.